Welcome to Scream Therapy. I'm your host, Jason Schreurs. In October of 2018, I found myself in the hospital, sitting across from a psychiatrist who was telling me I had bipolar. I was sent home with a bunch of medication and laid on the couch for a week. I had my iTunes library on shuffle, trying to shake the hornet's nest from my head. Ever since I was a kid, I've been using loud music as a form of therapy. Punk rock and mental health have always been connected. This podcast looks at that connection through the lens of different guests. This is Scream Therapy. Wow, episode 100. We did it. And now here we are at episode 100.5, a recap of the past 10 episodes, with people who link their involvement in the punk scene with their mental health, and the mental health of others. With each of these conversations, I learn more and more about how to maintain stability while living with mental health conditions that I have to manage every day. Like the peer-led support groups I'm part of, talking to other punks about their experiences has been instrumental in my health. My hope is that you, the listener, will find inspiration and feel supported by the stories in these episodes. Here's what happened in episodes 91 to 100. On episode 91, I talked with Eteria Rosenberg, the vocalist and bassist of Rid of Me. Eteria discussed suicidal ideation and how confronting the concept of death makes him appreciate the positive things around him. Eteria explained how making noise and writing songs for the band has saved his life, literally.
Everybody's struggle, life is really hard, especially like under capitalism, especially in the States. Life's hard, and I will never pretend to understand like somebody else's journey or struggle. So when I think in terms of like suicide for myself anyway, like I'm not even against the concept or the idea of me like actually participating in the act. It's more just like, is now the time, And generally I'm like, as of right now, I have enough going on. Existentially, I'm just not ready to meet my maker, I guess. But I'm also like okay with it. Death doesn't scare me at all. I just get tired, But I'm good. It's all good. I don't know. I have a lot of love in my life. I'm very lucky. I try and think about just like how crazy it is to just exist in the first place and kind of focus on that. And then I'm like, cool, it's fine.
I welcomed Valerie Knox of the Anti-Queens on episode 92 to talk about attention deficit hyperactivity and how it was underdiagnosed in females during the 90s. After recently being diagnosed with ADHD herself, Valerie went on a deep dive to figure out why doctors missed her condition early in her life.
So it turns out, in the 90s, and I remember this, it was very popular to talk about ADD in kids and boys specifically. It was always boys, and it was always boys that were being diagnosed because they presented in such an obvious way. They were moving around, they couldn't sit still. They're interrupting and they're fidgeting and they're go, 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 go all the time. They're bouncing off the walls. And it turns out, years later, after more research and more studies, it was always there in female persons too. It just presented itself different. So with young girls, they weren't bouncing off the walls, but they were sitting there daydreaming, which I did all the time. And it would present itself in being able to understand certain things. And I was tested for being gifted in elementary school. I was taken out of my classes with 3 other students, 2 boys and 1 other girl. And this went on for a couple months, I think in grade 6 or grade 7. And then, suddenly I was being put into leadership camp. There's personality differences, there's intelligence differences. It just presents itself totally different. And the more I learned about it, I'm like, this is sounding a lot like my experience as a child. And then going into teenage years, it can show itself as depression.
Episode 93 featured Jose Prieto of Make War. Jose discussed his history with panic attacks and how he's learned to cope with them. The attacks are terrifying when they're happening, but Jose says one of the ways to manage them is to embrace them, because they always pass.
What if you accept it and instead of like fighting it, like maybe love it and like maybe I'm anxious today, so like I'm just going to take it easy today, or I'm going to go for a run or something. It's still hard to do that because at some point I was on a really good streak, like really, really, really good streak. And then suddenly I felt like a panic attack at work. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't like presenting. Someone else like was just like showing something in like normal day. And I had to go to the bathroom like in the middle of this presentation and like take a Xanax and like do worst thing. I'm like, I told myself like I can't have this at work. If this starting to affect my professional life, then it's going to become a problem. That's when I started medicating it, like a new SSRI. And this one is working very well for me. So therapy definitely has helped me a lot. And this kind of therapy that I've been doing really helped me with my writing process as well, because like I started writing a lot more about it. And I started writing in a way that's as like I was talking to my anxiety.
On episode 94, I discussed the overwhelming effects of anxiety with Christopher Lee Lewis, a singer and songwriter and former member of the Kinnison. Christopher says being creative and making music is the best way to calm his anxiety and keep him in the present.
If I am writing a song, time doesn't exist, therefore the anxiety doesn't exist. But you can't force the creativity, right? You can't just go in your room, in your office, in your studio, lock the door, and then be like, okay, it's time to be creative, so I'm not anxious, right? That's not the way it works. It just comes when it comes. When it does, you have to jump on that and take advantage of it, not just for the fact of being creative, which we all love to be, but it's also, yeah, I guess that helps, but you can't force it. It's a reprieve when it's gifted to you, but you don't know when it's coming. And then, there's times where I'll write 5 songs in a row, like I'll just be creative. And then 3 weeks will go by and I'll be like, oh, I haven't written a song in 3 weeks. And then the anxiety kicks in and says, maybe that's it. You're out of songs. It's never going to come back again. You've used up all of that. And then that causes another level of anxiety. And then you pick up instrument to start fleshing something out, and then you start questioning yourself, wait, am I just doing this to get out of the funk, or is this natural?
Tommy Meehan of Squid Pisser and the Mighty Guar joined me on episode 95. Tommy talked about screaming and playing guitar from behind a mask. He said it's a liberating experience and a way to explore different parts of himself.
Okay, now I'm Grodius, and Grodius only exists in these times. I'm just kind of wiped clean, and I'm existing as that character and not as Tommy, and vice versa to a degree. So because of that, I'm not necessarily taking out my Tommy frustrations when I'm Grodius, but I'm sure that plays into it, like how I'm feeling. But in general, I'm pretty like even tempered and well adjusted. So like I have like healthy ways to kind of let things loose, and maybe doing all this band stuff is that healthy way in letting stuff loose. I'm not punching walls or anything like that, or like yelling at anybody or anything. So maybe it's because I do this band stuff and I get it out that way.
I brought Adam Eckhoff of Oh Are They onto episode 96. We talked about ways to acknowledge self-doubt and other difficult emotions that come along with anxiety. Adam explained some of the tools he uses when his anxiety interferes with his creative process and everyday life.
I feel like it directly has impact on being a musician. The first thing that comes to mind is performing. Obviously something that I have trouble with. I tend to make myself ill before shows a lot of the time. I get feeling of nervousness, butterflies, and it sometimes will manifest into physically being sick, like throwing up or gagging or that type of thing. It stems from the domino effect of negative thoughts can sometimes lead to negative outcomes. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, what if the show doesn't go well, or what if I don't play right? And that can sometimes manifest into reality. And then I'm not playing very well, and then I'm letting the rest of the band down, and it's just like an ongoing cycle. It's hard to stop that once it starts to happen. It does help to put myself in the present, because I think a lot of that does come from being worried about the future. So kind of checking in and reminding myself that it is anxiety that's making me feel these things, and taking a minute and processing that sometimes can help. It doesn't always help. I think it's a good starting place for dealing with that.
And Berlin guitarist Christian McElhaney was my guest for episode 97. Christian talked about being a touring musician with family at home. He stressed the importance of staying connected with his partner and being supportive and supported when he's on the road.
Just like any relationship, at least for me, I'm such an open person. I like to be very close to the people that I'm close to, if that makes sense. I want that openness in my relationships to where people can vent and express, unload and offload whatever they're dealing with. And so with her and I, we were just able to communicate our feelings to each other all the time without any judgment or any frustration or whatever. If she's dealing with something, I want her to know that she can always bring that to me, and that I'm always available to help her walk through it, even if there's nothing I can do. That's the biggest thing too, is a lot of times it's I'll ask, what can I do to help? And it's nothing really for me to be done. It's just something she's just feeling and going through at that moment. So if anything, more than anything, it's just venting and listening. And by the time we're done with the conversation, she'll end up feeling a lot better because she's been able to discuss it and get it out and feel validated in that she's not crazy in the way she feels, right? And if I can go, hey, I understand what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense that you feel the way that you're feeling right now. Most people in life, I think the hardest thing is just feeling alone and you're going through something that no one can relate to. And I really always want to relate to people, even if I don't know specifically what they're going through, but I still want for them to be heard and understood. I think that's the hardest thing a lot of times, is feeling alone and misunderstood.
Holly Minto of Crawlers joined me in episode 98 to talk about intimacy and mental health. Holly explained that she had a turning point in her early 20s after a mental health crisis. She realized that she wasn't a side character in her relationships and was able to find what she calls a new normal in her life.
I was still experiencing, when I was 18, before I kind of knew I was mentally ill, I was still experiencing doing those things like hunting relationships for cheap dopamine, or being oh, someone finally finds me attractive. That means I'm worth something. Let's go, But I didn't think of any negative connotations from that. I just thought that, feminism, badass, this is great. I'm doing this for me. Now that I'm older and I'm kind of dealing with repercussions, and that wasn't anything to do with 18-year-old me or 17-year-old me who was doing that. This is to do with society and the fact that I normalized that view in my head. And now that I'm older, I'm oh my God, for a while, actually worthy. But I think when you're younger, you can receive hugging and loving from your family and your friends, and it's a lot more normalized. Whereas as you get older, it's oh, you need a relationship, or you need this and you need that. And I kind of got swarmed with that because I was an unattractive kid in high school. So I was oh, no one loves me now. But as soon as I was deemed a little bit societally attractive, I was this means I must be loved. It's no, that's not what it is. Don't be fooled.
Early riser vocalist and guitarist Kiri Oliver was my guest on episode 99. Kiri discussed her social anxiety and how it affects going out to events and making new connections. Punk rock helps, like playing in bands and watching live shows, but the socializing part is where she struggles. Over the years, she's learned some valuable tips for setting boundaries.
I started going to a lot of shows alone, especially when I was back home in New York, and that would be very scary. This was before smartphones. I didn't have anything to distract myself, and I would just be standing there waiting for the band to start. Because when the band started, I was safe. But when the band wasn't playing, I was just I'm alone. I'm so self-conscious. I don't know anyone. I don't know how people are perceiving me. I don't know how to talk to people. So that was scary. But the fact that I knew the band was going to start playing and I belonged and I had a reason to be there, that made it worth going. And then when it switched for me was when I found a purpose. When I started a band, or when I started reviewing shows for a local website or reviewing local bands, and then I started booking shows. That is what really helped me, because I need a purpose. If I'm just somewhere at a social event and I don't have a purpose, that is very, very stressful. I am not really going to be able to be relaxed. I'm going to be on edge the whole time. But if I have a purpose, if it's my show that I'm playing or my show that I booked, then that's great, because I'm there for a reason and I have a job to do and I'm interacting with people in that capacity as this person who's playing or booking or whatever. And that really helped me.
I celebrated episode 100 with punk activist and therapist Sasha DeBruhl. Returning to the podcast since his last appearance in 2021, Sasha is Scream Therapy's first repeat guest. Sasha talked about the Internal Family Systems Model, or IFS. He explained how IFS allows us to identify different parts of ourselves that need to be protected and nurtured, and how we each have a core self that knows how to heal.
In individuals, we have a bunch of different parts, and here's how we talk about them. So everybody has parts that are exiles. They're exiled. They're the parts of us that carry pain. They're the parts of us that have like the traumatic memories. You can think about them like people. They're like children, often like little kids. In fact, my first IFS teacher, she said this thing to me many years ago. She was like, if you're freaking out, if you're having a really hard time, it's almost like you're on a school bus full of screaming children. And the really important question you want to ask yourself is, who's driving the bus? Who's driving the bus? Are the kids at the wheel? Are they like crashing into the oncoming traffic? Or is there like some part of you that can be in the lead? And so in the IFS model, there's exiles, and then there's like protector parts, which is like the parts that like help you get stuff done during the day. And then everybody has a self. And everybody has the self. Everybody, no matter who you're talking about, everybody has a self that is fundamentally curious and compassionate and creative and courageous and clear and has a sense of connection to something larger. Everybody has that. And that's the part that you want to be in the lead.
I encourage you to go back and listen to these full episodes and many more at screamtherapyhq.com. I recently guested on the Able Voice podcast, hosted by Haley and Kim. Able Voice is a podcast featuring unique stories of people who are passionate about music therapy. Here's a short clip from the beginning of the episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Able Voice podcast with Haley and Kim.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we have a very special guest. Welcome, Jason Schreurs, to the podcast. Hello.
Hey, Haley and Kim, how's it going?
Really good. We are excited to talk with you about your life story, your projects, what has led you down this field. It's very different to, what we're typically having on the podcast, but very exciting and very fitting with what we do as music therapists, very much in alignment with how we view music as a gateway to healing, a gateway to wellness, a gateway to therapy, and all around well-being for us as individuals, as humans, and the special connection that we have. So I wonder, before we jump into all that you've done so far in the work that you're doing, is there an important song on your playlist right now, and why is it important for you?
I'm sure a lot of your guests say this, but there's just so many to pick from. I went into my most listened playlist, and there's one band that's come up over the last probably 10 years called Spanish Love Songs, and they're from LA. They're a melodic punk rock band, and pretty much all their songs are about mental health topics, specifically mostly depression. And the person who writes the songs lives with depression and has for a long, long time. So I think those kinds of songs really identify with. And yeah, they're the ones always in my playlist, and I never stop going back to them. And it's funny because it's the same ones keep coming up, and it is the dopamine hit of listening to the same songs over and over again because they're just so good. There's one line in one of the songs actually that I wanted to read really quick. It's just gives you an idea of their lyrical content. So it's, sometimes I want to vanish completely, call in sick from life. Hearing those kinds of things when you are depressed, it's just so validating.
Thank you for sharing that lyric and that in general, but that lyric is resonating really deeply with me right now because I just came from a music therapy session where many folks are experiencing depression as well. And there was a heaviness today in that there's something, calling sick from life just feels very authentic and very vulnerable, and like perhaps a sentiment that we wouldn't necessarily say out loud. And there's a certain validating feeling of hearing it in the music. And like you said, that dopamine hit of hearing the same song over and over again, but also just that continual reminder of the meaning of it and the connection to it is really beautiful.
Yeah, and you'll see that as a common theme as we go about punk rock, and just feeling validated and feeling like you're seeing yourself in the music is such a huge thing, and saying things that you wouldn't normally say, out loud to people.
Definitely. Along the same vein of that, we're curious to know whether there are any particular
musical influences in your life, whether that's specific artists or the genre itself, but anything that has kind of impacted you musically?
Yeah, I'd say a couple things. One, when I was quite young and how I got into punk rock was skateboarding and skateboarding with my friends around the neighborhood. And a friend of mine gave me what referred to as skate rock, and it's punk rock, but it's centered around skateboarding. And that's really what changed my life, was being able to connect, something like skateboarding, which helped me and helped my mental health, with this form of music. From there, I went into all kinds of different punk rock bands, metal. I was quite into metal when I was a kid. I think the one band that's the most influential for me over the years is a band called Fugazi. They're from Washington, D.C., and they're very personal, but they're also really political. And they've really taught me a lot about the world. Musically, they're very challenging and diverse. I mean, they've got so much going on musically, and they're not your typical punk band in the sense that they have like a lot of melody and structured, textured songs. But I've been listening to them for 35 years now, and I'm not tired of their songs, and they just hit me right in the heart, that band.
Awesome that you can have such a long-standing relationship with a band or with an artist, and it's still, like you said, you're not tired of it. It still keeps on going and resonating. It's really cool.
Yeah, and there's also something special when you find those artists that can remain impactful in your life through different seasons of your life.
Yeah.
As you've grown and learned more about yourself and more about how you operate within your environment and within relationships. And that music, you still keep coming back to it, and it's still relevant, and maybe you find new meaning in it after a while, but it's exciting to know that music has that quality for you, to find music that has that quality, that you can keep going back to it no matter what season you're in.
Yeah, and finding things that weren't there when you first heard it, little clues. Maybe like for me, a lot of the bands talk about mental health, but of course, I wasn't really aware of what I was going through. But going back and seeing all the things that I could find in those songs. Oh yeah, he was talking about depression here. Oh, this person was talking about bipolar over here. And it's like, I see it now, but of course I didn't see it then.
There's a famous quote about music, and it says, "Where words fail, music speaks."
Yeah.
And that's what I thought of when you were saying that just now. It spoke to you without you even knowing what it was at the time. But the music spoke to you, and you could feel it in that way. Speaking of words, we're going to throw you a bone here and maybe put you on the spot a little bit, but we are introducing a new game this season where we want to just get to know you a little bit more, and your musical preferences and what comes when you are just put on the spot. So there's a game that's called Song Association. And we're going to give you 3 random words, one at a time, but 3 in total. And we want you to think of a song that has that word in either a lyric in a song or the song title itself. It'll be amazing to see what pops up into your head first. And so we're going to put on a timer for 10 seconds for each word.
Sounds good.
The first word is say, S-A-Y.
It's like right there. There's a song that says, I don't care what you say. I don't know what band it is, but it's like, I don't care what you say. I'm going to do it anyway. And it'll come to me later on today and I'll know the band name, but right now I don't. But that was a really impactful lyric when I first heard it. Because punk rock's all about resistance and smashing authority. It's like the really kind of cliche version of it. But when it comes down to it, it is. That's what it's all about in a more, I guess, holistic way, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome.
And I think that gets the point. You got the lyric.
Yeah, Haley and I have played this many a times, and often that's what it is. We only know the little segment of the song that has the word in it, so we sing it or we say it, and we have to look it up afterwards.
Yay! Okay, second word. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Give. Give.
There's a song called Give Me Back by a band called Embrace, Washington, D.C. again. And the whole idea is that it's about taking back what belongs to us, taking it back from forces that it doesn't belong to, ourselves, taking back ourselves. And yeah, give me back.
Give me back. Yeah. I feel like punk rock would have a lot of lyrics that could also lend themselves well to like a mantra or like a little like that saying of like, yeah, give me back or give me whatever it is.
For sure.
Well, it's like a battle cry.
Yeah.
Okay, last word. You're really good at this game. Under. U-N-D-E-R.
I'm just thinking of phrases like pulls me under. There's a band called Undertow from Seattle. They're broken up now. but they are very influential in the straight edge hardcore scene, which is a sober scene, no drinking, no drugs. And they really preached positivity and about how being sober can really make people more positive in their lives. So I don't know if that counts, but Undertow is the name of the band.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll take it.
I was going to say, I'll
3-3.
count it for sure. Ding, ding, ding.
To listen to Able Voice, a podcast about the power of music therapy, check out @Able Voice Podcast or synergymusictherapy.com/able-voice-podcast. For more episodes of Scream Therapy, go to screamtherapyhq.com or wherever you listen to podcasts. Big news, the Scream Therapy book is available now. Scream Therapy, a punk journey through mental health, tells my story and the stories of others who use punk as a catalyst for mental health. Like this podcast, it links the community-minded punk scene with the mental wellness of the punks who belong to it. To order the book, go to screamtherapyhq.com. For merch, check out Scream Therapy on TeePublic. Okay, enough promoting, it's time for some thanking. Thank you for listening to Scream Therapy. Doing this podcast and talking to folks about punk rock and mental health has been a crucial part of my own mental stability, and it means so much to me that you're out there listening. Scream Therapy is created in the Cathet region of coastal British Columbia, Canada, on the traditional territory of the Tla'amin Nation. Contact me at screamtherapyhq.com or email me at screamtherapypodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Let's talk about punk rock and mental health. Until next time, take care and be well.